Welcome back guys to another video. In today's video I have something a little bit different, something a little bit exciting. I've noticed that there's always been a debate amongst people whether they choose designer, whether they choose niche. And I think increasingly a lot of designer brands, they're now going into the luxury designer route where they have exclusive ranges. And sometimes that can kind of compete with niche fragrances. And I think the niche world has become a little bit more complicated where houses that used to be quote unquote niche, in of itself the word means something a bit special, unique, dime in a dozen per se. They're becoming a little bit more mass appealing. They're almost getting sometimes more people buying from them than designer houses. So I feel as though it's like quite a unique subject. And I think the misconception is that when you buy niche, you're always getting quality, which most of the time you are, but that isn't necessarily the case. Sometimes with the designer realm, you think that you're paying more for a specific fragrance, like an exclusive designer fragrance, and it might not be as good quality or worth the money. So in today's video, I have 5 niche and designer fragrance showdowns where they'll compete against each other. Keep in mind, guys, I don't have half of my collection. It's just basically in storage because I've been moving home recently, so it's just all over the gaff. I'll try my best to show you guys, 5 different fragrances that can compete with each other. Also, this is so off topic, but I just thought I would tell you guys anyway. I went to a Buffy convention. It was like for the love of fantasy. So if you guys are vampire type, I don't know, people who are interested in that kind of stuff, let me know, because I was thinking, I don't know whether this is going into a niche of a niche, to do a video just surrounding like the characters from different shows, whether that's Buffy the Vampire Slayer, What We Do in the Shadows, Vampire Diaries, etc., and give them each a fragrance per person. I don't know, based on their personality. I don't know whether that's a bit too weird for you guys, but let me know. I did get to speak to one of the main actors from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and that was super fun. I actually gave him a gift in the form of a fragrance, of course, and the fragrance was meant to smell like blood, so I just thought it was quite funny. But anyway, that's completely off topic. But anyway, we'll just jump straight into the video. So the first question for everyone here is, how did they class designer and niche fragrances? I think everyone has like a slightly different definition of the two. For me, designer fragrances have to come from a house or a brand that do other things. So for example, they sell fashion, they sell jewelry, beauty, all of that jazz, and they kind of branch out into different avenues. So they don't specialize in fragrances. Whereas I believe with niche fragrances or niche brands, they specialize only in fragrances and that's what they're known for. And maybe they produce them in less quantities. But again, like, I'm going to show you guys a couple of fragrances which I'm unsure whether their brands are really classed as niche or not. One of them being Galan. As you guys know, Galan is a humongous house, but they started with fragrances and that's their specialty, right? But they slightly branch into beauty, so this is where I'm a little bit confused how to class them. Anyway, we'll just jump straight into the first showdown. Right, so the first showdown is between Sole di Positano from Tom Ford and Elise from Rance 1795. I nearly said 1975, that would be completely wrong. So Rance 1795 is a niche house and Tom Ford is obviously a designer house. Now, both of these fragrances to me smell quite similar. And the reason being is because they both share citruses, white florals, and some aquatic accords. I'm just going to do a comparison between the two. So with this one, I've already sprayed it on my hand for you guys, and it's a really beautiful fragrance. It has very like juicy citruses towards the top, so like oranges, like bergamot. But then it also has neroli, and neroli is a beautiful white floral, as you guys know, and it gives this almost like bitter muskiness to the fragrance, makes it a little bit more mature in my opinion, and then ends with like a slightly marine saltiness towards the end and like some aromatic kind of vibes. But overall, it's a really beautiful fragrance, very mature, classy as well. So if you're into that more citrus, white floral type of vibe, like for example, Neo from Xerjoff, this would also be a great contender between the two. But then now I'm going to compare it to Sole di Positano. So this fragrance is, oh, that just went everywhere. This This fragrance is a little bit similar, but to me it has a fizziness of the citruses in a sweeter kind of realm, almost as if you're having like a tonic of some sort, maybe on the beach or somewhere exotic. And then the neroli in here and the white florals are a bit less bitter, and that's what I really enjoy. I find with this fragrance, what might really shock you guys is that the way it's been blended is far more creamy in my opinion. It has more of a silkiness to it, and as I said, the aromatics in here doesn't take over the fragrance. Whereas with Elise, I almost feel like it has this underlying musky bitterness. So in terms of which one wins in this battle, I guess, I would say Solid de Positano. Tom Ford has definitely killed it with this fragrance. I think they've done a fantastic job with the blending, and it's just beautiful. So out of the two, I will pick this one. So the next showdown that we have is still with Tom Ford, funnily enough. You guys know I'm a really big Tom Ford fan. I know a lot of people don't really like the house. That's probably because of their more newer releases in comparison to their older ones. But anyway, we're going to be comparing, or the showdown's going to be for Lost Cherry versus Sirene, one of the newest releases from Fragrance de Bois. Now, both of these are predominantly a cherry fragrance. They kind of go in two different directions. So with Tom Ford's Lost Cherry, if you guys know this fragrance really well, it's a very realistic cherry in the sense that it has that tartness and that juiciness that you would get from eating an actual cherry. And I think that's really hard to capture in a fragrance. You know, with fruits in particular, they have different type of nuances, right? Like when you're biting into something, it usually has like this tart juiciness in the beginning, or even sourness depending on what kind of fruit that you're eating, and then it has like this underlying sweetness, fleshiness, which is really hard to encapsulate in a fragrance. You know, sometimes tasting something doesn't necessarily mean that you'll be able to get it in a smell or in a scent at all. So I feel as though they've done a really fantastic job with this fragrance. I'm a little bit biased because it really reminds me of like this childhood Italian, not even a snack, but like this delicacy where you have like glazed cherries in a pot. It's just beautiful. And what I love about Lost Cherry, it does have an underlying enveloping musky marzipaness, but it's not too overwhelmingly sweet. Like if you're into marzipan and that almond bitterness, then I think you'd really enjoy this. Along the fragrance, you never lose the cherry. A lot of fragrances that include cherry, sometimes they tend to lose that note quite quickly, and maybe it's hard to have that running through the entirety of the fragrance. Overall, you guys know I absolutely love this fragrance. It's a true beautiful gourmand and I can't live without it. So Sirene from Fragrance de Bois is it's quite interesting because Fragrance de Bois, and this is going back to what we were talking about before, right, is technically a niche house. They specialize only in fragrances, and they are a fantastic niche house to say the least. They have some really beautiful options. I tend to find that they're a little bit more mass appealing in the sense that they create fragrances that maybe appeal to what's like trending at the time. So for example, cherry's been trending for a little while now, and gourmand fragrances in general, maybe for the last couple of years, if not a little bit longer. And that's not an issue at all. I feel as though a lot of people do buy Fragrance de Bois just because they're a more popular niche brand. I don't know. You guys let me know in the comments, because I'm still battling with myself what classes itself as niche and what classes itself as designer. But anyway, this fragrance is really beautiful. I'm gonna spray a little bit here just to remind myself. Yeah, so that cherry to me is a little bit more on the sweeter side, as in it doesn't have the same tartness maybe as Lost Cherry does in the very beginning, but equally it still has that beautiful juiciness, that fleshiness that you would get in a cherry. It's really realistic, and I think what makes this fragrance even more interesting is that it ends with like this oody woody accord. I doubt there's maybe real oud in here. Maybe they've made that accord through cypriol. But as I said, it kind of gives like this new depth to the cherry. So in Lost Cherry, you have the marzipan almond bitterness as an undertone. For Sirene, you have this woody, oody kind of accord undertone, which makes it a little bit more sexy, darker, maybe a little bit more mysterious. I don't know, guys. I feel as though I find it really hard doing the showdown between these two. Honestly, as far as cherry goes, I would give it to Lost Cherry. Why have I done that with the lid? It's just gone all over the place. I would actually give it to Lost Cherry. And the reason being is because it encapsulates the cherry fruitiness as a whole. And I find with Sirene, even though it's a fantastic fragrance and I would love to own a bottle, oud in here is maybe a little bit sharp to my nose, and I take that down to the cypriol. Sometimes cypriol can have like this medicinal sharpness, like scratchiness in the base, and I think that's kind of what I'm getting in here. So between the two, I'll give it to Lost Cherry. I'll give it to you, girl. Right, so the next showdown is between a very classic designer fragrance and a niche fragrance which has been newly added to my collection. So the two that we're doing a showdown between is Cinema from YSL and, oh god, I always butcher this name, La Danza Delle Libellule from Nobile 1942. Now both of these share a very similar note of vanilla, and the reason why I wanted to do a showdown between these two is because you have vanilla that shows itself as both cold and warm. A lot of fragrances that use the note of vanilla sometimes don't get that kind of vibe. You know, vanilla is a very interesting note where it has this underlying warmth and sweetness, but I think as well it has like this really cool icy quality to it. And I think both of these fragrances capture that. They're slightly different. So this one leans a little bit more fruity and this one leans a little bit more floral, but they both share very similar notes. So with Cinema, this is a very classic fragrance. In all honesty, I think it's one of the best vanilla designer fragrances that you can find, and it's been around for quite some time, so we'll just spray it in the air. So initially you have this really beautiful orange clementine note, which makes it a little bit more fruity, juicy and tart in the beginning. That very quickly dissipates though, and then what you're left with is this like this cold warm vanilla, like this icy warmth in the base, which is just beautiful. Sorry, my camera died again. And that's also lifted by this like almond bitterness in the base. That almond almond bitter gives it a little bit more of like a warmth to the base, but equally you have that ice cold powdery vanilla, which is just beautiful. This has withstood time and a lot of people still buy this fragrance, which is just fantastic. And as I said, one of the best vanillas you can get as a designer fragrance. Now in contrast, you have La Danza Delle Libellule, and this is a little bit more fruity. So you have apple in the beginning. You also have a warmth from cinnamon, and it's a little bit similar, I guess, to Cinema because you have bitter almond as the warmth. In here you have cinnamon as the warmth, which I think is quite cool. But then underlying you have like this very fairy, powdery, vanillic quality that has both coolness and warmth, and that gives it a very unique take on this fragrance. I have done, by the way, like a full video on this, so if you do want to watch that, you can do. I'm just going to link it down below for you guys. But as a whole, this one isn't actually as expensive as maybe other niche fragrances. I think for 75ml, which will last you a hell of a long time, by the way, because the performance on this is really, really good, is only about 130 quid. And I think if you were to get maybe like a full bottle of this, it might be about 80 or 90. So overall, you're kind of having like a 30–40 pound difference just for the sheer beauty and coolness of the vanilla and the very airy powdery quality. I would actually give it to the niche. I would give it to Nobile 1942. I think they've done a fantastic job encapsulating that powdery cool vanilla. This one will win the showdown in this because we've had two designers win so far, so we'll go for La Danza Delle as the winner. Right, so the next the next showdown might actually surprise a couple of you. Let me just get the fragrances. So we're going to be highlighting the notes of sandalwood, and how better to do it than Samsara from Galan versus Caban from YSL. This is what I was talking about in the beginning of the video. With Galan, I'm a little bit unsure. Guys, please let me know if you still class Galan as a niche house. In my eyes, because like they're the OGs when it comes to fragrances, they've been around for a very long time and they specialize in fragrances and perfumes, I would almost suggest that Galan is niche. But are they mass appealing? Are they commercialized? 100%. You know, it's really hard to say. I don't really know where I stand on this subject, but please let me know, guys, below what you guys think. Now, these two are different fragrances, let me not lie. But what I found very similar with these is the note of sandalwood, and they have this powdery, creamy quality in both. So I think I'm going to first start with Samsara. This is actually the eau de toilette that I borrowed. The eau de parfum is a lot more deeper, creamier, and luxurious. This to me is a very, very realistic sandalwood. Sandalwood has like really beautiful nuances of that creaminess, but also like in a weird way pencil shavings, almost going into that nutty, coconutty kind of realm. In this you also have orris and some like buttery, creamy accords. It's really very gorgeous, and it kind of is all anchored by this ambery, woody type of accord. It's really, really gorgeous. This is a classic. This has been around for a very long time. I would have done anything to try the OG of Samsara, you know, before being reformulated. I know it comes part and parcel of, you know, being around for a long time. You will reformulate your fragrances, but I would have done anything to try the OG Samsara because it's such a gorgeous fragrance. It has a deepness and silkiness and creaminess all at the same time. Honestly, I know a lot of people might find it a little bit more vintage smelling, but I really like that about it. It smells very mature and elegant, but all in the right ways, and cozy all at the same time. So that's Samsara. And then with Caban, oh, this, you guys know, I don't even have to explain. Caban is a very unusual fragrance. The reason for it is because, yes, it does feature a huge note of sandalwood, which gives it this creaminess, pencil shavings kind of vibe, but then you also have notes of elemi, some pink pepper, so it has like this underlying spiciness, creamy Coca-Cola. That is exactly how this smells like to me. I know it sounds like a little bit strange, but it has like this Coca-Cola kind of vibe from the elemi, and it's just a really fantastic fragrance. Now, comparing the two, when we're comparing the note of sandalwood, I would almost give it to Samsara, and the reason being is because Samsara really encapsulates every variety of sandalwood in this fragrance. Caban, it only really leans to that creamy, slightly nutty kind of quality, but I don't think the nuttiness is necessarily coming from the sandalwood. So out of the two, even though I absolutely adore this fragrance, I mean, you guys know I don't even have to explain, I will give it to Samsara. You have won this showdown. Fantastic. So yeah, that's Caban versus Samsara. Now, the very last showdown that we have is between the House of Maison Francis Kurkdjian and Hermes. What an interesting combo, right? So I thought to myself, since I only have half of my collection, what other ones can I compare? And I was thinking Amyris Femme, this is the Extrait from MFK, and Jour de Hermes. These two are very similar, and I'll tell you why. So they're both predominantly citrus white floral fragrances, slightly more going on than this one, but equally they're both quite similar, how they open and their mid. So Jour de Hermes is a very realistic lemon, bergamot, and white floral fragrance. To me, it smells more of gardenia than anything. It has like this creamy, buttery gardenia note, and it also has like hints of jasmine and other white florals in here. The most predominant kind of note in this is definitely the lemon. This is a very true citrus white floral fragrance, but in the most feminine and beautiful way. It has like this powderiness towards the base. Honestly, this is very linear. I think most people might find it a little bit screechy, but honestly, I don't think it's as screechy as maybe other citrus white floral fragrances in the designer realm, and it's super refreshing. Oh my god, when you spray this fragrance, it just feels like you've come out the shower, or that you're just going for like a beautiful walk during the summertime. It's a very invigorating, beautifully blended fragrance from Hermes. They also have Jour de Hermes Absolu, which I love that fragrance. And honestly, I think that would have been better comparing to this fragrance because it has like an underlying slight like woody amberiness in the base. So then we move on to Amyris Femme Extrait. This one is a love of mine. You guys know I really, really love this fragrance. It's both very citrusy in the top of like a lemon, bergamot, but then also has like this underlying powdery white floral mid. To me, I definitely get jasmine and iris. It's a really fantastic fragrance, and it's all grounded by this like slightly ambery resinous quality. So the citruses never go away, and I think sometimes that's really hard to convey in fragrances, and they're not screechy either because it's all kind of grounded by this powdery creaminess from the white florals and the iris. If you guys have never tried it, please give it a go. super feminine, very refreshing, especially as I said with this one, if you've just come out of the shower and you just want to be clean, feminine, and have a beautiful aura around you, I think this is really beautiful. Now, out of the two fragrances, which do I think wins this showdown? Personally, I would say MFK, and the reason being is because although it is a lot more expensive, it has nuances of other notes that you can definitely pick up. It's not one-dimensional as much as this one, three-dimensional with the florals, with like this ambery, sticky resinous in the base. I think as far as longevity goes, this one outperforms this one. So I'll give it to the niche this time. So that is Amyris Femme Extrait from MFK. So guys, that's it for today's showdown. As I said, once I do get the remaining half of my collection, I'm hoping to do another one of these videos where I do like a proper showdown, maybe even of like super popular fragrances like Baccarat Rouge, like Sauvage, all of these fragrances. I think I'll do like a really good showdown. So please let me know if that's something that you guys want to see. Please like and subscribe. It really does help with the channel. As you guys probably tell, I have been being a little bit more consistent with YouTube, and that's for a reason. I really want, you know, to get more content out for you guys. So let me know in the comments down below what you guys classify as niche or as designer, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye guys!